Hello travelers, so today I want to do a quick testing comparison between the Samyang 18mm 2.8 lens for the full frame system and the Sony 20mm 1.8. So the main difference between them is obviously that there's going to be more background blur with the 1.8, but the Samyang is 2mm wider and it's also about 200 or so grams lighter. So just down here I'll show you a picture of the size of the two lenses. Obviously the Sony lens is almost double the length, not quite double the weight, but it is a little bit bigger. But obviously you're getting a lot more for the size with the lower aperture. Now I'm going to be stabilizing the footage of both of these tests in Sony's Catalyst browse. So this camera does have IBIS stabilization, but the Catalyst browse does a lot better job of stabilizing the footage after it's been shot, although it does take a little bit longer and it's a little bit annoying to have to wait for it to do that. So I'm holding the camera here out as far as my arm will stretch out. It's quite wide, and when you're holding out this far you can definitely start to feel your arm aching if you're holding it for a longer period of time. If I hold it about here, I can kind of support my elbow with my other hand, and it's a little more comfortable. But obviously I think if you're going to be holding your camera and doing like a vlog like this for any long period of time, then the Samyang is going to be better because it's 200 grams lighter. Alright, and I'm also using the Rode Wireless Go as well. That's just this one here. So let me know how the audio sounds in a comment below. So now I'm on the Sony 20mm 1.8. It is quite a little bit noticeably heavier while I'm holding it. And if I hold it all the way out here, this is the wideness you can expect. And I am at 1.8, so you can see there's a little bit more blur in the background. And the good thing about this lens as well is that the minimum focus distance is much closer, as you can see. So if you did want to show anything on the camera, it's quite nice to have that really close focusing. It's quite windy here, so let me know how the wind muff on this wireless Go is working. And also let me know how the stabilization's looking in Catalyst browse. Just gotta avoid these spiders' webs up ahead. I'll also do a final test sitting inside with the camera stationary, and I'll show you what they look like in APS-C crop mode. So when you crop the 20mm with APS-C, it becomes like a 30mm. And when you crop the 18mm with the crop mode, it becomes about a 28mm, I believe. So let's go ahead and test it set up in a studio setting. So this is the 20mm Sony FE 1.8 in a studio setting. The camera's actually not that far away from me. It's kind of like, I don't know, half an arm length. But you can see how wide it is. You get a real lot in the shot. So when you do crop into a 30mm with the APS-C, which I will do in a moment, it does crop in a fair amount, and it gives you kind of two options to choose from if you are going to be using this as kind of like a one lens setup. Okay, so this is the 30mm crop, or the APS-C, which is I think a 1.5 times crop. So you can see it's a little less wide, but you still get the nice background blur. So if you're going to be using this, which I'm planning to as a one camera setup, or sorry, if you're going to be using this as a one lens setup like I'm planning to, you can use the wide for when you're outside and vlogging, and you can use the 30mm for when you're sitting down and wanting a little bit more of an intimate sort of face-to-face kind of feel. Alright, so I've switched over to the Samyang 2.8 FE. So this is, as I said, it's a much smaller and lighter weight lens. If you're going to be using a one lens setup for traveling, this probably would be a little bit of a better option. It's still pretty sharp, and the quality of the images is still very nice, and the video as well. One of the main differences is you don't get the nice 1.8 aperture background blur, or the separation that you get with that. And the focusing distance is about there. So it's not quite the same close focusing distance. So there's some things to consider. Oh, and it's also about probably half the price, or a third of the price. And this is the 18mm Samyang in the full frame 18mm mode, so it's no longer cropped. And as you can see, you get a lot more in the image. So as I said, both lenses are really great. This one is a lot cheaper and a lot lighter and a lot smaller. So in a lot of ways, this is probably the lens that I should be using. but I do plan to be using the Sony lens because it has a lot more features and it feels more well built and it's more solid, and I believe it has full weather sealing, whereas the Samyang doesn't have any weather sealing. So all those things combined make me want to steer towards this one as a one lens setup, because I can sacrifice the extra size and weight for the quality and the weather sealing. But those are some things you might want to consider if you're going to be using this as your vlogging setup or a one camera sort of one lens setup. Alright, so just ending the video here on the Sony FE 20mm 1.8, and this is in the crop mode, so this is equivalent more of a 30mm right now. I just want to show you that the minimum focus distance is much closer on this one. It's almost to a macro level, but not quite. But that is something handy if you're going to be doing product shots or showing products up to the camera like so. As you can see, the minimum focus distance is also pretty good, and the transition between focus is also pretty smooth, although that is something you can change in the camera settings. So overall, some really nice options of wide-angle lenses to choose from. The Samyang is definitely affordable and it's quite small and lightweight. It's definitely one that I would suggest if you're starting out and you don't have a particularly large budget. But the 20mm Sony lens is the newer lens with weather sealing. It is a fair bit more expensive, but I think that the features more than make up for the price and these extra size and weight. So do leave a comment down below what you thought about the difference between the two lenses, and also be sure to stay subscribed to keep up to date with future videos.